everyone. How are we doing? It is a couple days into week 3, and I have yet to reflect on week 2, so that's what this video is. Glad to sleep right here, so yeah. I filmed this once today. I filmed it outside, and it looked beautiful, but it was so windy that all you could hear was the wind. I'll insert a clip here. So we're back to do it again. I had so much footage from last week, decided to take notes this week. I think it's better for me to just kind of know what I'm talking about anyways. If I'm looking down at my notes, I apologize. But let's talk about week 2. Week 2 is called Recovering a Sense of Identity, and it's essentially all about setting boundaries with yourself and with the people around you. Week 1 was more focused on not exposing your art prematurely or before you're ready. Week 2 is about creating a sense of safety within yourself, so when the inevitable criticism comes from the people around you, you don't internalize it too much. Now, this was a really interesting chapter for me because this week my artist date was performing in a songwriting concert. I performed 2 songs that I haven't shared on social media or with anybody at all, and it's been a while since I performed original music live, so I was pretty nervous. This chapter kind of talks about how you may experience some frustration this week, both in the content and in your own emotions, and I definitely felt that. I did get my morning pages done every single day, not every morning, but every single day, and it's starting to be one of my favorite parts of this besides reading the chapter. I really like forcing myself to have an hour to just brain dump, kind of treating it just like stream of consciousness, which I'm pretty sure is what Julia Cameron's goal is. And even if it doesn't lead to me immediately creating something or writing a song, I feel lighter throughout the day. I feel like I got a weight off of my chest. And I've always felt a little bit censored in my writing, even in my journals, my personal journals, in fear of other people reading them. And I think a lot of people feel that way. I made a deal with myself that if I'm doing this challenge, I'm going to do it right. And I'm going to write everything that I need to write and not what I think sounds good or sounds palpable or sounds appropriate. Being honest with myself and being blunt is much more effective at actually making me feel better than trying to find the perfect words for what I am feeling. Because sometimes I don't need to hyperanalyze how I'm feeling, I just need to feel it out. What I'm getting at is I'm really liking the morning pages. Now, Julia is essentially getting at the minute we commit to our goals and the minute we begin trusting ourselves, if criticism comes immediately, it feels like we've failed. She is explaining that that's not the case, that's just part of the process. She says on page 41, which is the first page of week 2's reading, it's important to remember that at first flush, going sane feels just like going crazy. There is a recognizable ebb and flow to the process of recovering our creative selves. As we gain strength, so will some of the attacks of self-doubt. She says some common self-attacks are, okay, so I did okay this week, but it's just a temporary thing. Okay, so now I need to plan something big and do it right away. Those 2 really stood out to me because that's how I feel. I get a surge of motivation and a surge of passion, and I want to get a million things done at once. When in reality, I just need to be taking little steps each day. It's not about trying to perfect each day. It's about going through the ebbs and flows of each day and constantly coming back to yourself, recognizing when you start talking bad about yourself or you start doubting yourself, and knowing how to reframe that. This week at the songwriting concert, I was really, really scared of what people thought of me. I was really scared that my writing wasn't good. I was scared that my melodies weren't, sweet enough. I was scared that I wasn't good enough at guitar. And I got very positive feedback and people were very nice to me. And I didn't experience a lot of outside criticism like I was expecting. The thing that made it hard was my own self-doubt. And I wasted so much time worrying about what people thought about me that I couldn't enjoy the actual accomplishment of taking the next step in my journey. I really needed and need to address the ways I'm holding myself back. And she says, creativity flourishes when we have a sense of safety and self acceptance. She kind of ties in what we talked about in chapter 1 of being blocked creators. She says, as long as we were blocked, we often felt that it was arrogance and self will to speak of ourselves as creative artists. The truth is that it was self will to refuse to acknowledge our creativity. And this was what I experienced this week. I wanted to have kind of a little blurb or something to share about each song before I sang them. And as I was practicing my, speech or whatever, practicing what I was going to say, I found myself hesitating before saying that I was a singer songwriter. I found myself kind of wanting to overcompensate and explain myself away when in reality I just needed to be honest. And so my challenge for myself this week was to allow myself to call myself an artist. If you write a song, you're a singer songwriter. And I've written many songs. And why am I hesitating to call myself a singer songwriter when I'm actively performing in a songwriter concert? Like, why am I acting like I don't love to do this and I don't do this every single day? She says that many blocked artists are the most judgmental out of everybody because seeing someone live out their fullest potential is threatening. She says, your getting unblocked raises the unsettling possibility that they too could become unblocked and move into authentic creative risks rather than bench sitting cynicism. This is crazy, and this really made me look at myself because I can admit that I have definitely been judgmental in the past of people who are trying and people who are wanting something bigger for themselves. And, I'm kind of ashamed to admit that. I am cheering for everyone who is trying now that I'm trying, but I definitely in the past have myself felt threatened by other people who are trying because I know that I have the opportunity to go for my dreams and I'm not. And so, how dare someone else have the audacity to do it? It makes me feel like I'm failing, when in reality, I'm just failing myself and I'm being rude. And I've realized that other people judging your dreams does not reflect your inability to achieve those dreams, it reflects their inability to commit to their own dreams.
Why'd I kind of eat with that?
She says, on page 43, as blocked creatives, we focus not on our responsibilities to ourselves, but on our responsibilities to others. We tend to think such behavior makes us good people. It doesn't. It makes us frustrated people. I loved that. People don't understand the process. They support you at the beginning and they support you at the end. And this is something that I learned in my weight loss journey. I didn't tell a lot of people while I was doing it because I could tell that number one, I didn't need and wasn't prepared for and wasn't strong enough to handle criticism from other people. But number two, people aren't going to understand why you do the things you do unless they've been on the same journey themselves. But a lot of people come around and it's not your responsibility to inspire people, but she says the best thing you can do for your friends is to be an example through your own recovery. I'm not saying that I'm an example to people. I'm not saying that, I'm influencing people, but I do think that I have learned this, like I said, in my weight loss journey, and now I'm learning it kind of more in my career because I don't owe anyone an explanation. But sometimes just watching other people achieve things that you want to achieve, that enlightens you. That reminds you that, no one's going to do it but you. Now, she kind of goes back and forth between a lot of concepts in this chapter, which is why I have notes. But she eventually gets back to the people who are criticizing you, the people that have something to say about you chasing your dreams, about you trying. And she ends up calling them crazy makers. My interpretation of this part of the chapter is we can't forever hold guilt for allowing this abuse, but we are responsible for victimizing ourselves and have to acknowledge that while their actions are not our fault and are not a reflection of what we deserve, us staying in this situation is a reflection of how much we respect ourselves. This looks different for everyone. Like I am not trying to victim shame, but I do think it's important to acknowledge that we often play a part in how long we stay in situations that are not good for us. And she says, if crazy makers are that destructive, what are we doing involved with them? The answer, to be brief but brutal, is that we're that crazy ourselves and we are that self destructive. Like, ouch, right? Ouch. As blocked creatives, we are willing to go to almost any lengths to remain blocked. As frightening and abusive as life with a crazy maker is, we find it far less threatening than the challenge of a creative life of our own. What would happen then? What would we be like? Very often, we fear that if we let ourselves be creative, we will become crazy makers ourselves and abuse those around us. Using this fear as our excuse, we continue to allow others to abuse us. So are we going to allow other people to abuse us, or are we going to continue abusing ourselves? You know, like what? The next time you catch yourself saying or thinking, he or she is driving me crazy, ask yourself what creative work you are trying to block by your involvement, right? Now, I'm really lucky to have a really good support system. And so, while that resonated with me, I think the abuse that I endured this week was my own abuse, my own self sabotage. I often have a habit of committing myself to something, and then when it starts to unfold naturally, I freak out. And she goes into this. So, let's talk. She says, the reason we think it's weird to imagine an unseen helping hand is that we still doubt that it's okay for us to be creative. And this is my favorite quote from the entire chapter. One of the things most worth noting is in a creative recovery is our reluctance to take seriously the possibility that the universe just might be cooperating with our new and expanded plans. We've gotten brave enough to try recovery, but we don't want the universe to really pay attention. We still feel too much like frauds to handle some success. When it comes, we want to go. I read that and I was, you know, okay, page 52. Are you ready for this? Very often, a creative block manifests itself as an addiction to fantasy. Rather than working or living the now, we spin our wheels and indulge in daydreams of could have, would have, should have. One of the great misconceptions about the artistic life is that it entails great swaths of aimlessness. The truth is that a creative life involves great swaths of attention. Attention is a way to connect and survive. Now, this was crazy because within the past few years, have learned what maladaptive daydreaming is, and I think I have done that my entire life. I've always been a dreamer, I've always struggled a little bit with my attention span, and I find myself getting completely consumed by what I want to do instead of actually doing it. And I read a quote recently that said something like, We are we are what we do and not what we say we want to do, or something like that. And that reminded me a lot of this section. Like, why am I not doing the one thing that's actually going to make that come true? And to end off our direct quotes, she says, success or failure, the truth of a life really has little to do with its quality. The quality of life is in proportion always to the capacity for delight. The capacity for delight is the gift of paying attention. And like we talked about in chapter 1, why is art and creativity so important? Because it forces us to pay attention. So, all in all, this week was challenging. It was frustrating because I was so hard on myself. It really revealed a lot of self sabotaging habits that I have, and it reminded me of how in control I am. And because I love quotes, another quote that I read recently was something like, you can't change the people around you, but you can change the people around you. And I feel like that sums up this chapter perfectly. So, all in all, my takeaways from this week: I love my morning pages. My artist date was a songwriting concert. I have a newfound appreciation and love for songwriting, and validation is way more important to me than I want to admit. The biggest thing that's holding me back from reaching my full potential is myself. You get what I'm saying? Week 3 is about recovering a sense of power. If you're doing the artist way along with me, best of luck. If not, thank you for listening, and I love you.